Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, specifically monsters. I'm not going to do that alone. I have a Dungeon Master Roundtable with me, and we're going to go around and answer a question for you to help you flesh out your game, or just ignore us, that's fine too. And that is, what is a fun and interesting way to use a dragon in your Dungeons and Dragons game, or your Pathfinder game, or your adventure of some kind? We've got a whole lot of people here who have some ideas, and Alex, would you like to share what you have first?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to use dragons, and I like to do kind of, I guess, the World of Warcraft thing where they can turn into people, and I like for them to be. I tend to use them more good. I don't usually use them as enemies, which I know is weird because that's the thing you do. But I like them to be, the helpful guy, the grumpy old man, the more wise characters. Uh, I tend to use them in that form. Someone that just as an NPC throughout the game, and then all of a sudden at the end you realize, hey, they're a dragon. Or I know it might be a bit corny, but I like that angle of it. I like kind of I guess the Eastern philosophy of dragons, where they're again more guardians and protectors and wise men, and they help as opposed to hurt. I'm not opposed to using an evil dragon, but even then it's usually like a yin and yang situation. This dragon is evil, but he's opposing this dragon, as opposed to just like, oh, there's a big evil dragon out in the field, go fight him. I'd rather find a more interesting enemy, if that makes sense. And that sounds terrible because I love dragons, but I'd rather find something different as opposed to just, yeah, it's another dragon is the bad guy.
Well, fair enough. Look, this is what this is all about, is trying to find some different angles for people rather than what maybe they've traditionally done. Taryn, did you have any ideas about what you might do with dragons or like doing with dragons?
Yeah, I think of a dragon as like not even a force of nature. It's a force almost that supersedes nature. If a dragon were to like come into an environment, I mean, that's why they have these regional effects, right? Like sands will twist, you'll see faces and trees and suddenly certain monsters will just spawn out of certain areas. They aren't just a force of nature, they can warp the realm to like suit their characteristics, right? And personally, I love this whole thing with like a brass dragon. Brass dragons have pulled me out of like story continuity issues. I've realized whenever I'm like halfway through a dungeon, I'm like, oh wait, this kind of doesn't make sense. You know what? They're in a dream realm. That's what's up, right? And like, so I've used dragons to pull myself out of some bad DM spots. But like getting to know the personality of them, right? I don't think there's really that many monsters that have as defined of personality characteristics or personality traits as dragons do. Using them in combat, I tend to feel like dragons are more so just like they have a pretty standard layout of they're going to have a breath weapon, they're going to have their frightful presence, and don't get bit or hit by them, right? Like they're big sacks of hit points that fly at that point. But like leading up to a dragon, like I think that the most important part of like any dragon, like any stat block for a dragon, honestly, is like more than other monsters is definitely what else comes on the page for it, right? Like let's not even look at the stat block. Looking at like brass dragons are boldly talkative. It tells you about like this prized treasure section. They're going to covet magic items. It seems kind of standard MO dragony. But like what else they can do in a region to like humanoids that are in the area are just going to be better storytellers. They're going to be better listeners, like just generally a bit more charismatic. Like I love this idea. Like, yeah.
It's a very wide scope effect that they have. It sort of takes the regional effect idea to another level. What you're suggesting, I kind of get what you're talking about. It's interesting. I like the idea. Jordan, what did you have for dragons?
Dragons are awesome, but it's funny that they're so big and powerful, and then they don't leave their castle or they don't leave their lair, and it's like people are always scared of that dragon over there, like Smog, but Smog never comes out for whatever reason. So I've always liked dragons to be almost impossible to fight. Like, you don't just walk up and fight a dragon. But I also like the idea that dragons are bound by some kind of rules that either mortals don't understand, or I don't know, something magical about them. And it makes me think of specifically vampires in European folklore. You would throw seeds on the ground and the vampire would have to like pick them up and count them one by one. And that was just like, vampires did that. We don't really know why. And so this idea of like being bound by rules, and I want my dragons to be bound by rules. And it's like, well, they don't leave because they know if they do, then they'll start, I don't know, like they'll call this other dragon to them. Or specifically, I've been reading a lot of Eberron, and they have the Draconic Prophecy. And a lot of the dragons who understand the Draconic Prophecy, which is all of the future and past events that are going to happen in the world of Eberron, they don't do very specific butterfly effect kind of things because they know the ramifications of what will happen. So it's like, I want to kill this person, or I want to eat this person or this cow or whatever, but I'm not going to, because I know that that person is going to give birth to the other person who invents this wheel that does whatever magical something or other. So if you're going to have one in an encounter, I've always liked dragons being like, not necessarily how do I outsmart it, but what laws is this dragon bound by, and how can I manipulate that to get the outcome I want? Because maybe you don't want to kill the dragon, you just want his magical sword, or you need like a vial of blood. So, I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
So when you started talking about that, I went back to a conversation I had with AJ Pickett and Dungeon Dad, and we were talking about the great game dragons are involved in, which we don't really have an awful lot of information on as far as I can tell in any books. It's pretty sort of rare to have anything like that come up. And so what you were talking about sort of kind of reminded me a little bit about that.
There's got to be something about them that like we don't know. And the fact that that isn't in a book is even cooler, because then the DM is just like, we don't know. Like, I like that. So you can use it however you want.
This one of the things that I was kind of a little bit miffed by was that Fizban's Treasury of Dragons was like the prime place to have placed the story and the concept of the great game. So to give you a basic idea, and Jordan, I'm sure you know a bit more about it than I do, may not. You can correct me if I get anything wrong. My understanding is, from what I've been told from AJ, is that the Great Game is basically a game that dragons play it's like chess, but the chess pieces are the lesser beings within the world. And they manipulate and move them for one ultimate goal, and that is dragon domination and bringing back the dragon kingdom. The rule of dragons is only a matter of time. They'll get it sorted out. The giants don't know what they're doing with themselves nowadays. The dragons' time is coming again. And the Great Game is sort of like that. And part of their ability to play this game is they have to give up, I believe, some of their magic, spell casting abilities, or magic in some way, to acquire the ability to understand, I think, the very thing you were talking about the past, the present, and the future, so they can see what's going on. And so there are some rules within the Great Game that they have to follow, I believe, but ultimately is that every other creature is just a little pawn or a play piece that they push around the board for the end result, which is checkmate. And I think it'd be fun to actually have something like that concept revealed in some way eventually, using a dragon and your player characters. Like, oh, we didn't realize that there was this great game taking place, and that we've just been moving around on the board at the beck and call of all of these ancient dragons or great worms. Because they have a plan.
Group patron is perfect for that. Like, you've been hired by a mysterious figure, and it turns out to be a dragon. By the time you're level 5, you realize it's a dragon. And by level 10 or 11, you realize that you're being played. And like, that would be a super interesting and fun game.
So the other idea I had, not spurned by or inspired by Jordan, is I was thinking of what happens when a dragon manages to form a relationship with a society, let's say a city, that has sort of an underground section and sewers and so forth, and you've got to keep the city warm. Well, what is the best thing you could possibly have underneath the city? Well, a furnace is one thing, but who's going to look after that furnace and keep it lit? Well, it's got to be a dragon, right? So I was thinking, why not have a dragon, and the city brings them what they need, whether it be tribute or food or whatever, and the dragon makes sure, since it's not very hard for it to do, that the furnace doesn't go out, and that these furnaces continue on and keep the city warm, particularly in a cold region where you probably wouldn't want to get frozen like an ice block. So that was an idea I sort of had.
Dracothermic power. Is that?
Hey man, it's energy efficient.
Clean energy, guys.
Clean energy.
I like that a lot, especially you get a bunch of kobolds going around and running wood all over the place to fill it in. They just keep filling the dragon's hoard underneath. Yeah, I like that a lot. Actually, one thing too that Jordan said that I thought was really cool was treating dragons like almost like a puzzle. When you were talking about using the folklore and stuff like that, I think that's a super cool idea of instead of them being a boss, they're just the puzzle in to be defeated. I think that's a really cool concept.
It's like a great reveal for. I mean, you're using creatures that are supposed to be like ancient, right? I mean, beyond ancient, we're talking about like usually their lore is always like before the universe was, or like immediately after the universe was created, dragons came about, right? So like they have to be intrinsically tied in somehow to the laws of the universe by some means, and like that can be a really cool reveal for your magic system. You do something unique, like have that big like, oh, that's how this works, or that's such a cool like moment like that.
Everything's dice rolls. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It all makes sense now. But no, it's what you just said made me think like elves feel more ancient and like knowledgeable than dragons do sometimes in games, and dragons should be the super ancient, like they're at the beginning of the universe, yet I don't think they're treated like that a lot. So, and myself included, like I've put dragons in my game where it's like you have some young teenager dragon that's out to prove himself, and that's why the party gets attacked by him. But
there was a video that Dale Kingsmill did that like really kind of like rewired my brain for like these fantasy races. And she was like, well, yeah, if something is supernatural, it is super natural. Like, making it like, what is Superman? Superhuman. What is supernatural? So like, think about that. Fae, like we're the weird ones to Fae or dragons, right? We're the newcomers, like whatever. It's not that dragons are alien. They're more natural and intrinsic to the universe than a human that, randomly spawned up 10,000 years, whatever, right? Like, so I think that's also a really cool thing to lean into with like, use dragons to help like uncover the unique magic system you built up in your mind. And
Yeah, no, I think those are all really good ideas. And of course, if anybody out there doesn't like any of those ideas, you can just read the monster manual and decide to stick your dragon on a treasure hoard and make a big roar, and then have the player characters fight it, which I suppose you can do, but it seems a little bit boring to me. But let us know how you would use a dragon in your game down in the comments section. Thank you to my panel members. Thank you to Jordan, the Bear Bard, and Indestructoboy. Would you believe it? I managed to get them all in the same meeting at the same time. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.